edition.
Welcome to the WalterFootball.com Fantasy Football Show. This is our Week 10 edition. Joined once again by Michael Hofer. Michael, how are you?
I'm great, Walter. How are you?
I'm great. It's almost like I didn't ask that before. Joined also by Kim Calhoun. Kim, how are you this week?
Hi, Walter. I am doing great. I am just on cloud nine because I won my DraftKings pick last week.
Yeah, very nice. I remember you had a Matthew Stafford stack with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones running it back with Josh Jacobs. So that was a nice win. It was great to see you cash. I was rooting for you. I remember who you had on your team. So
how much more would she have gotten with Hawkinson?
It was.
Way to know.
I don't think it was the Hawkinson thing. It was, remember we chose Dalvin Cook over Christian McCaffrey. That was a big.
Oh, yeah, that was the killer. Yeah.
If she went with McCaffrey, she would have won more money. Although in that sort of a tournament with 300,000 people, it's, she wouldn't have won the whole thing. But it's because you needed some crazy some lineups. You needed Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett and Jacob Hollister, and running it back with Mike Evans and even DK Metcalf. So that was the formula for winning in week 9. But it's always tough to predict. But the Matthew Stafford lineups did pretty well. So I'm glad to hear that you cashed.
Yeah. Hey, I'm happy. I made more money than I spent. That doesn't happen very often.
So somebody actually had Hollister?
I played Hollister in some of my lineups.
Oh my God, you're a genius, man!
It was. He's their pass catching tight end. Seattle's pass catching tight end. He's actually someone in year-long leagues. If you need a tight end, or if you like to play matchups like I do with tight ends, I think Jacob Hollister is a nice guy to pick up because he's basically taken Will Dissly's role as the receiver. People know of Luke Wilson because he's the bigger name. But Luke Wilson's their blocking tight end. He catches like one pass a game. He doesn't have the upside that Hollister does. But we saw Hollister get into the end zone twice, so that was nice. All right, we had some news. I think a few things, a few injuries actually.
Running backs.
Yeah, some running backs, a key tight end, and a quarterback coming back from injury. So. Le'Veon Bell, he may not play this week. We don't know. He's not practicing right now. They're saying he may suit up, but I'm not sure. I think Le'Veon Bell at this point might be checked out mentally with this team, and I wouldn't blame him. They just lost to the worst team in NFL history, and the Dolphins are still the worst team in NFL history, even though they won. The Jets were so banged up last week that they couldn't dress the full team. They actually had active players who couldn't play. That's how injury ravaged the roster is. But Le'Veon Bell is he's another one who's injured. So I recommended Ty Montgomery as a pickup for year-long leagues. And even on DraftKings, I think Montgomery's worth playing if Le'Veon Bell's out. He's only like $4,000. But Michael, what are you reading into this with Bell? Do you think he's going to play? And would you rather, if he doesn't, would you rather roster Montgomery or Bilal Powell?
Those are excellent questions. Le'Veon has been tweeting quite a bit lately about how enthusiastic he is about the Jets. And Pittsburgh actually tried to get him back before the trading deadline. He released that information, and that's an actual fact. That's been verified. And he says he's glad to be a Jet, and he sounds like he's genuine about that. I believe him. He also was, before Sam Darnold had his ghost night, Le'Veon was talking about how great it is to have our leader back. So I really do believe the guy, but if he doesn't play, and the Jets are optimistic that he is going to play from everything I just read before we went on the air, and from listening to Adam Gase saying that I think he might say that. Bilal Powell's a better player. I've had enough of Ty Montgomery in Green Bay, his mental mistakes, and I'd go with Bilal Powell, and I'm not sure who's ahead. I actually read something saying that Bilal Powell has passed Ty Montgomery on the depth chart. So after careful consideration and picking up both guys and dropping both guys, I decided it's a situation to be left alone.
Yeah. Even with Bell, he's not ideal. Like, I mean, obviously you're going to play him because he's so talented and he's going to catch passes But he's not even seeing that many red zone rushes. It's unbelievable how the Jets are just ignoring him when they get deep in the scoring territory. They just don't want to use him at all. And I think it goes back to what Adam Gase said earlier in the offseason, where he said he didn't even want Le'Veon Bell on his roster,
Yeah.
which kind of made me wonder. It's like, what? Like, you don't want one of the best running backs in the NFL on your team? Like, I don't understand that thinking at all. But I know that in the summer, at least, Ty Montgomery is someone that Adam Gase really liked, and he used Montgomery a lot in the preseason. And I think he was using him as a proxy for Bell, who didn't play in the preseason. So I kind of think that, while Bilal Powell has gotten more work than Montgomery right now, my thinking is that Montgomery would just slide into Bell's role, and Bilal Powell would just reprise what he's doing right now. That's my thinking, but I guess you never know what Adam Gase is going to think. And
That's like Pittsburgh with Trey Edmonds and Samuels.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And Samuels, by the way, was a great play on DraftKings last week. I think I owned him in like 90% of my lineups. He was so cheap, and he got 20 DraftKings points. He only had like 5 rushing yards, but he caught 13 passes. It was just unbelievable for PPR.
Wow, 13?
Yeah, he saw a lot of receiving work. Unfortunately, he fumbled too, and that opened up an opportunity for the Colts to win the game. But the Steelers, luckily, they prevailed. Another running back injury. So, well, not really an injury here, but Kareem Hunt is returning. So, Michael, what do you think about Hunt coming back? Do you think that he's going to take touches away from Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I hate committees, and almost every team has a committee, especially San Francisco. Just a nightmare. But I've actually figured that one out, though. I started Matt Breida. What was it, last week when he did so well? So I was proud of myself. I finally got that one right.
Mhm.
But here, I think it's going to hurt Chubb. And it's sad because he's a really good player, and he's a great player to own. So I also don't understand why they pick up guys with character like that. They seem to like to collect them.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's so talented. I don't blame him for that. If he's remorseful in for what he's done, and I think everyone deserves a second chance. Well, not everyone, but I think most people. And if he's gotten help for it and he's gotten counseling, and I think you're willing to. I'd be willing to give him a second chance. If he did it again, then I'd cut him. But I think with Kareem Hunt is I thought it was interesting that last week Nick Chubb was on the field 60% of the time, which seems like a low number. And Chubb is very capable of producing even at that snap count. So if it was Dontrell Hilliard was on the field for 40% of the snaps otherwise. So I just think that Kareem Hunt is going to take Dontrell Hilliard's snaps, and I feel like Chubb is still a top 5 running back for me. Whereas Hunt will be more of the pass catcher on third downs. And you have to remember that Hunt doesn't have any experience with this team either. I know he's been practicing, but he just hasn't played a full game with this team yet. We don't know if he's in good shape. So I'm not going to shy away from Nick Chubb this week at all. But I wouldn't be afraid to play Kareem Hunt if I'm absolutely desperate in PPR leagues. Looks like we don't have audio on Michael again. There we go.
What's that?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm with you on the second chance thing, but Cleveland seems to collect guys that just have issues. Josh Gordon, Odell Beckham, and Baker Mayfield. And is that part of the problem with Cleveland? But Kansas City does the same thing, and they're doing well. So, what's the problem with the Browns?
The problem is that they're extremely poorly coached. Freddie Kitchens is a disaster of a coach. He, for some reason, he keeps challenging spots every week. It seems like he doesn't learn his lesson, and I mean, he just doesn't scheme plays open for Baker Mayfield very well. It seems like Mayfield has lost confidence, and I think a better coach would get that under control. And Freddie Kitchens hasn't been able to do that. Also, the Browns' offensive line is kind of pretty poor. They just don't block well. Their tackles are horrible. They trade away Kevin Zeitler in the offseason for Olivier Vernon, and people praised that trade for the Browns. I didn't understand it at the time. Vernon is a good edge rusher for sure, but he's past 30. He's still good. He's not what he once was, though. He's not dominant. He's just pretty solid. But they lost Kevin Zeitler, who's one of the best guards in the NFL. So they already had kind of mediocre to pedestrian tackles, and now they have a downgrade at guard. And they spent an early second round pick on Austin Corbett, who was a offensive lineman out of Nevada, and he failed. They even traded him because he just wasn't producing. So the blocking's not holding up. Mayfield has lost the confidence, and Freddie Kitchens can't turn it around. And earlier they had injuries in their secondary. I think a couple of weeks they were without all the starters in the defensive backfield. So you put all that together, and they've had an absolutely brutal schedule too. Their schedule has been so difficult. So I think when you combine everything, it's not a surprise that they struggled. Yeah, and actually, I actually think they win this week against Buffalo. The Bills are 6-2, and the Browns are 2-6. The Browns are favored by 2.5 or 3 points. I know we're a fantasy show, not a betting show, but I just think it's important though for fantasy wise, because if I'm right and the Browns win, that means they're going to have the lead, obviously, and if they have the lead, that Nick Chubb is going to run more, and I think Nick
fumble.
Well, hopefully not, but if Chubb is just a fantastic player, and if he has opportunities to run the ball, he can produce very well, and I think that's important for fantasy, obviously, but also DraftKings, because he's 7,000. He's I believe, like around $3,500 cheaper than Christian McCaffrey. So, obviously, you don't want to avoid McCaffrey, but if you want to get to other players like Michael Thomas and Tyreek Hill, then I think that Nick Chubb is a great pivot.
Well, if Kareem Hunt plays like he did at Kansas City, and with Nick Chubb's fumbling problem, he maybe could take time from take Nick Chubb's job. I hope that doesn't happen, though, because I think he's extraordinarily talented as well.
Yeah, I mean, he fumbled twice against New England. It's not a chronic problem for him, though. I don't think. I wouldn't be too concerned about it now. Now, if he keeps fumbling, you're absolutely right. But
I thought he has been. Let me check it.
Okay.
That because of his personal conduct issue, that and I don't like to bring this kind of stuff up. I like to see things go positive and forward. But do you think that has impacted the way that the team relates to him and the way that he plays and all of that?
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, he hasn't. Kareem Hunt hasn't taken the field yet. He's been practicing with them, so this is going to be his first chance to play with the team, and I think they're going to rally around him. He got into trouble and it was suspended, and rightfully so. But like I said before, he's gotten counseling. He's been remorseful. So I think it's worth taking a second chance. And if the teammates like him, then they're going to rally around him. Now if he's a jerk in the locker room, then he's not going to get any support. So I don't know how his teammates have received him and how he has been acting, but I think they would be willing to give him a second chance as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I heard you say that in the beginning. So I think you're right. I think when people show remorse, they do deserve some kind of second chance to right the wrong. So, and he is talented. I always hate to see good talent wasted like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a couple of other injuries. Brandon Cooks, the Rams receiver, he's out, already declared out, which is a little troubling. He had a concussion prior to the bye week, so I thought there was a chance he could return because you never know with these concussions. But the fact that he's already been ruled out on Wednesday, I think is a big issue for the Rams. And I don't like their chances in Pittsburgh anyway. And now they're going to be without one of their top playmakers. It'll help that Robert Woods a little bit, but I don't like his matchup. It'll help Josh Reynolds. He'll be relevant. If you want to pick up Reynolds up and use him as a desperate receiver, I think that makes sense. But I really don't like this matchup for the Rams because their offensive line is horrible, and Pittsburgh gets after the quarterback better than most teams in the NFL. And we know that Jared Goff just really struggles with when he's phased under pressure. So I think this is going to be a rough game for the Rams. But people like them. People are betting the Rams, and they think they're going to do well. I don't think they're going to do well at all.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he fumbled against Seattle. It was a pass, though. So back-to-back weeks he fumbled. He had 3 fumbles in 2 weeks. Talking about Chuck.
Wow.
I think I think that's okay. I don't think that's going to really affect. Now, like I said before, if he keeps fumbling, like he fumbles again this week and then again the next week, then we might be talking about a benching. But
didn't one get kicked out of his arm by his lineman? It was so that one doesn't count. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's so talented. It's not like he's a mediocre guy and he's just carrying the ball because there's no one else. I think you're willing to forgive talent. I remember a Pete Carroll quote from earlier in the year. Remember when Chris Carson was fumbling every week? And
oh my God, it was horrible.
Yeah, we thought he might be benched, and then Pete Carroll came out and said that Walter Payton was the all-time fumbling leader, and he just didn't care because Walter Payton was just so good. No, I don't know if that's statistically accurate, but that's what Pete Carroll said anyway. So he was willing to stick with Chris Carson, and credit to Pete Carroll, he made the right decision because Carson has been running well for the most part this year. So I don't know if Freddie Kitchens follows that philosophy or not. Like, who knows what Freddie Kitchens is thinking? But if he does, then he's going to stick with Chuba.
In 1967, Travis Williams set an NFL record for kickoff returns for touchdowns the year the Packers won their 3rd straight championship. And he was a very fast player out of Arizona State, super fast. But he had a fumbling problem, and Lombardi doesn't tolerate fumbling problems. So he made Travis Williams take a football with him everywhere he went, to bed, to the shower, and the players went and made a tape handle for him to carry it like a purse.
That is fantastic. I like that a lot.
That's classic.
Yeah.
That's classic.
Thanks. Now, Brandon, I'm afraid he may never play again. This is getting pretty darn serious. They're saying he had optimistic reports from whoever he saw, some specialists. But I don't know. This is getting pretty ominous. He's had an awful lot of concussions. The guys have quit playing a lot lately because of that stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that he's been ruled out Wednesday, like they're not even giving him a chance to clear protocol. I think you're right. This could be a season ender for him, which is a shame because he's so talented.
Did you see what Darius Leonard said? Darius Leonard considered quitting after his first concussion, and he's the best linebacker in the league. Points-wise, he is.
Yeah, he's up there for sure. And you look at the Colts, how they stopped the run with him, and then how they struggle against the run without him. He just makes a huge difference. And I mean, we've seen guys quit before. Chris Borland, remember him, the 49ers linebacker?
Oh yeah, he was superb, and I was sad about that. But I guess I have to respect these guys' decisions.
Yeah, he was one of the best rookie linebackers in the NFL. He looked like he would be a Pro Bowler for every year to come, and he quit after his first year because he was concerned about medical stuff. So
I think a lot of these guys might just take the cash because they get paid so much now, and they don't get greedy.
There's a lot involved, and we're not on that field taking those hits like they are. And I have a friend who did the same thing. He took a big hit when he got accepted in LA and got beaten up pretty bad one day and said, you know what, I want to live a little longer than this. And he walked off the field, never went back and never looked back. Still loves the game. It's still in his heart. But, he said it's a lot out there that people don't realize, and they don't really care when your brain is damaged. There is no insurance for them either. They can't just go out and get medical insurance like we do every day. So, that's a lot to take. This Brandon.
Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks. I mean, so he's just taking time out. There's not.
No, I mean he suffered a concussion the week before the bye in the London game against the Bengals, and when he suffered a concussion and he had a whole week off to clear protocol, and I just assumed he was going to come back, but they already ruled him out. It's only Wednesday, so usually they'll rule a guy out Friday if he can't clear protocol, sometimes Saturday even. But they just ruled him out Wednesday, not even giving him a chance to clear protocol. So that's why it's so troubling.
Well, maybe they know something that the rest of the world doesn't right now.
Well, no,
Yeah.
they're taking it very seriously. Back in the day, it was, well, you got your bell rung, just get back out there, and it was no big deal. But they take it very seriously today because they're afraid of getting sued. The NFL has to do that
Yeah, I
because the
remember
NFL's
seeing
known about this
coaches.
for a long time.
I remember seeing coaches telling kids to suck it up. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah,
when I played, that's why I had a bunch of concussions.
suck it up.
Yeah, they
Yep.
they used to make light of it too. That I don't know if you guys remember that Snickers commercial, where the guy gets dinged pretty hard, and he goes to the sideline, and the medical guy says, "Do you know what day it is?" And he's like, "Sunday." He's like, "Do you know where you are?" He's like, and then he mentions the field. He's like, "You know your name?" He's like, "I'm Batman." And then
No.
they used to make fun of it all the time, but now I think they know how serious it is now. So
Yeah.
it's a shame.
Well, since we're talking about the good old days, if I can interject something that I discovered, a very interesting statistic, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Earlier in the season, like week one, I had Kirk Cousins, and I had traded Matthew Stafford, and the league where we start 5 quarterbacks, and I thought, no way, I'm going through the season with this guy. And Stafford had a bad reputation from last year when he was playing with all kinds of injuries. So I traded Stafford for Cousins, and I was wondering how that trade went. So what I did was I went on my league and I arranged the quarterbacks by their fantasy points average. And I discovered something that was black players weren't considered smart enough to play linebacker or center or quarterback. It was a long time until we had a quarterback. The first 5 quarterbacks on fantasy point average right now, it's not Tommy Brady, it's not Aaron Rodgers. Number 1 is Lamar Jackson. Number 2 is Russell Wilson, although maybe some of his teammates might not think he's black enough. Number 3 is Deshaun Watson. Number 4, Patrick Mahomes. 5, Dak Prescott. I don't remember the last time we had 5 African American quarterbacks leading the NFL. That's a significant advance in our culture.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're all phenomenal.
Yeah.
Prescott maybe not, but the other 4,
Well,
the
they
other
play
4,
differently. They run a lot. And that's the difference between white quarterbacks and black quarterbacks. And by the way, Matthew Stafford is number 6. So he's the top rate quarterback ahead of Ryan Rodgers. And then we got Jameis Winston and Brady. So I found that very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Yeah, I don't think Prescott belongs in that company. He really benefits from that offensive line in Dallas.
Yeah, well, it's a great offensive line.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've seen him without that line this year, against the Jets where he struggled and until garbage time, and then also against the Packers where he struggled again until garbage time. So I think a lot of his fantasy production has come in those late games, late in those games in garbage time, and also against the Giants twice.
Yeah,
that horrible
the
defense.
Packers.
Right. Yeah. In the garbage times against the Packers and the Jets. So I think Prescott's fantasy stats are a bit of a mirage. But the other 4 guys, that is definitely legit. I mean,
Lamar Jackson was amazing, crushing Tommy Brady.
Yeah, no,
Amazing.
he was great.
Amazing.
He was great. I worry about Jackson. Against like the tougher defenses in the playoffs. We saw last year with the Chargers kind of wrecked them pretty well. The Patriots, I think their defense has been phenomenal entering last week, but they played no one, absolutely
Right.
like no one, and this was their first test, and they failed miserably. So I wasn't too surprised that Jackson did that well. I mean, and Bill Belichick's defenses have always struggled against scrambling quarterbacks. Like not just this year, like going back past several seasons. They just don't scheme that well against the scrambling quarterback. So, a couple of other injury things. Evan Ingram, tight end for the Giants. He had I believe an MRI or something, some medical thing. They're outsourcing it to a renowned doctor, and so it sounds like Evan Ingram might be out. We don't know yet.
No.
It's still too early, but it doesn't look good right now for him. So that's pretty bad for the Giants. Obviously, Sterling Shepard has been out, so they're going to be pretty limited. I kind of like Daniel Jones a little bit heading into this week, but with this Evan Ingram news, I've downgraded Daniel Jones. And otherwise, Nick Foles is coming back for the Jaguars
Yep.
after the bye. Um, my DFS strategy coach Kenny, he pointed out something that I would like to share. In the fantasy playoffs, the Jaguars will be battling two soft defenses. In Week 15, they play the Raiders, and in Week 16, they play the Falcons. So if you're kind of savvy in your long leagues, I think that maybe not in trading, like picking up Nick Foles, who should be available in most leagues, just stashing him on your bench, he could do very well in the fantasy playoffs if you don't have a strong quarterback. So I think that's something to consider. Nick Foles shouldn't be owned, I don't think, unless you're starting multiple quarterbacks in your leagues. Like I imagine, Michael, he's probably owned in your league, but
I'm in 8 leagues and he's gone in every league.
really, that's
Yeah.
surprising to me. I would not imagine that, but I think you can trade for him at least, and yeah, I think that that's a good option as well. I'm actually going to look up his ownership because I found that bizarre.
However, at the end of the season, they may just dump that salary and go with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, it depends how he finishes. I think we'll
Yep.
see. Yeah, Nick Foles is owned in only 7% of ESPN leagues, so
Wow.
I mean he should be owned in your leagues if you're listening. So
Well, I'm in ESPN, I'm in NFL.com, and I'm in Yahoo, and he's gone everywhere.
yeah, like I said, that's surprising to me. I would assume that he'd be available, and I mean he is only owned in 7% of leagues, and yeah. So that's all the injury news I have, Michael. Unless I'm missing something, am I missing anything?
Well, the situation with the Dolphins, I was just trying to figure out before the show, which is a better guy to have in a year-long league, Mark Walton or Rex Burkhead? I mean, they're both kind of useless. But I wanted your opinion of that, because Walton, when he comes back, he'll be the starting. I mean, the other guy's so bad, Balaj.
I would go with option C, none of the above.
Yeah. But again, you know, you want to keep stuff away from your opponent in the playoffs, and we can pick up a lot of running backs in our league, so that's actually very relevant.
I'd be willing to give my opponent either Mark Walton or Rex Burkhead for nothing. I don't think either is going to produce anything. So,
but Rex Burkhead is ruining Sony Michel. You know, every time Rex Burkhead plays, Sony Michel gets nothing.
Yeah, I mean that happens. Brandon Bolden does that too.
Yeah.
You never know with Bill Belichick. Like he'll
for years.
He'll use a running back a lot one week, and then that player won't even see the field in 3 weeks. So it's weird. It's a weird thing. I guess to answer your question, I would say Rex Burkhead, because there's a chance that in a blowout he'll catch some passes and then he'll find the end zone in the fourth quarter. There's a chance that could happen. Whereas Mark Walton is just one of the worst running backs in the NFL. Like he shouldn't even be on an NFL roster. Like the only reason he's playing is because the Dolphins are so bad, and the Dolphins can't block, and Walton can't really can't take advantage of the rare running lanes he sees. So I wouldn't own Walton in any league. Or
That's why they got rid of Kenyon Drake, though.
I think they got. I think they. Well, that's a whole separate story. Seeing Kenny and Drake run like that in his first game was just unbelievable. Like the Dolphins had this guy for years and they never used him, and he gets traded. His first game, he looks phenomenal. Like I don't understand what the Dolphins were thinking. Like it goes back to Adam Gase. Gase had him for several seasons and just didn't use him. Like the Gase always said that Drake wasn't an every down ball carrier, and yet we saw it in one game. We saw him carry the ball extensively, and he looked like a Pro Bowler. So I don't know what the Dolphins are thinking, but I don't think they have a Kenny and Drake type player in Mark Walton. I think he's just bad. Although he is better than Kalen Balaj, I'll give him that.
So does Drake make Chase Edmonds droppable?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the pecking order has to be obviously David Johnson, then Drake, and then Edmonds. I think. I like Edmonds.
For one game, but it was a phenomenal game.
He was unbelievable.
He looked like he knew the whole playbook after 2 days.
Really, and it's not like he was playing a scrub team. He was playing the best defense in the NFL, and he looked great. And yeah, I mean that was mind-boggling to me how the Dolphins just misused him. and they acquired nothing in return. A sixth-round pick for that guy. Like, when that trade happened, I thought it was I didn't think it was that great of a move for the Dolphins, or the Cardinals rather, because Drake just hadn't done anything, and now we see that obviously he's definitely worth the sixth-round pick.
I got to give you mad props too in the other horrible backfield in Detroit that you were right about McKissick.
Yeah, McKissick, he did well. I think he's the guy you want to own, especially in PPR leagues. Although, I mean, this week is actually I think it might be more of a Ty Johnson week because the Bears are bad against the run. But I don't think, I'm not crazy about other guy. I think I'd rather have McKissick most weeks. I think this week, though, Ty Johnson might get more points, but it'll be close.
Who's the guy to own in LA with the Rams?
For
the long term, not for this week.
Well, I mean, I still think you want Gurley. It's just that his touches are down. He's not going to get 20 touches a week anymore. I think that's over.
So is it Malcolm Brown or Darrell Henderson?
I think it's Henderson. I think it has to be. Brown was the incumbent backup guy, but Henderson is just a very explosive player. He's a lot better than Malcolm Brown for sure. So I think I would go with Henderson. And if Gurley were to get more injured and miss time, I think Henderson would be a phenomenal pickup in year-long leagues.
Well, I just read something that he had like his lowest snap count of the year.
Henderson?
Gurley.
Oh, Gurley, yeah. He was. That was a blowout against the Bengals.
All right.
And in the fourth quarter, he was just on the sidelines. He wasn't even in the game at all. So they just fed the ball to Henderson, and that looked pretty bad for fantasy. If you own Gurley, my condolences. That was.
What about Melvin Gordon? Did he suddenly get in shape in 1 week?
Yeah, it was. Or
is it the offensive coordinator change?
I think it was more to be in shape. Like Melvin Gordon.
Really?
I think Melvin Gordon would have gotten in shape eventually with Ken Whisenhunt. He's just too good. And I think I said it on the show a couple weeks ago, maybe last week. I was going to keep using Gordon in DraftKings because he's just too good not to play well eventually. And it's not like he has an injury or anything. He just wasn't in shape. And it took him a few weeks, but he's finally there. And you can use him again in fantasy for sure.
So he's better than Eckler?
I would rather use Gordon in standard, but I would rather use Eckler in PPR.
PPR, okay.
Yeah,
very good.
It's different. So yeah, if you're playing on DraftKings, which is PPR, you want to use Eckler. If you're on FanDuel, for some reason you want to use Gordon, I would not recommend FanDuel. By the way, it's I don't think it's a good platform. I think DraftKings is a lot better. And so that's the breakdown. I would use the Charger running backs. Anything else, Michael, before we get to
I'm wondering if Joyce is my principal from Corbett. That would be funny if she called it.
that would be pretty random.
Yeah.
I think she was on last week.
Yeah.
I think she's just trying to learn. She's
okay, cool.
Becoming a fan.
Yeah.
So are you, Kim, and you've learned a lot. I'm amazed. Kim and I tried to help her through the flea flicker lineup thing, and it's not so easy. And I'll tell you one thing about Kim. She does not give up. I thought there's no way she's going to do this. My head exploded like 3 times. Instead of putting a guy in the bench, she cut him. What'd you cut him for?
He told me to bench him, and it wouldn't let me bench, but it would let me cut. So I thought, cut. It's, logic to me. So this whole fantasy football of understanding the difference between benching and cutting, and
well, you're a fast learner, I'll tell you that, and you don't give up. So I got to give you a lot of credit.
I'm trying to treat it like I would my business, right? I'm trying to listen to the analytics and learn the techniques and mechanics of how you do all of this. And once I think, with Mike's help, I mean, he actually helped me re-get those guys back real quick.
She almost won last week too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fun. It's just taking me time to understand the mechanics and I'm smooth with it, right? So, because like you guys are talking about Nick Foles being someone that might be good to pick up, and I'm looking on my flea flicker now. I got DraftKings and flea flicker. And I'm looking at my flea flicker, and it says I can trade, but I don't know that I really own him. So
No, you could trade for him.
I could trade
And it's
for
a shame you missed out on Finley.
Well, I'm learning, right?
Yeah,
So
he got snapped up. I think Walter's right about Finley.
I like Finley a lot in the preseason. Ryan Finley, the Bengals' new quarterback. He
Okay.
reminds me of Alex Smith. I think he's going to be like not great. I think he could be a solid starter in the NFL. I think that's his upside. Now, granted, he could fail. He could be a bust for sure. But and we'll see. The Bengals they're giving him an 8-game audition. If he succeeds, then they're going to use him next year. If he fails, then that means they're probably going to have the first or the second pick in the draft, and they'll take a new quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in these next 8 weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah. So do we have anything else before we get to the rankings?
Well,
I don't. Any questions?
Andy Dalton was like a 9-year bust, right? So Cincinnati, you can be a bust and you still start.
Yeah, and Andy Dalton was always like a below average starting quarterback. I don't think he was ever horrible, but he just like he has obvious limitations, and
Well, Cincinnati's cheap too.
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
Why are they so cheap?
That's the ownership. That's
Paul Brown's son, and it just it's ingrained in them not to spend money. And they've had some great players and just let them get away. Carson Palmer.
Yep, absolutely. All right. That's okay. So the top 10 quarterbacks this week. Patrick Mahomes is back. He's number 1. I assume he's going to play. We don't know that for sure yet. Obviously, Matt Moore I think he could be a viable option this week.
I love Matt Moore. I don't understand why he's never been a starter.
He's always been a high-end backup for sure.
Yeah.
Great
attitude, great team guy.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, if Mahomes is back, I think he's the de facto number 1. Although Lamar Jackson right behind him with 1 fantasy point behind him. Jackson's floor is so high because of his rushing. And the last time he played Cincinnati, Week 6, he went 21 of 33, 236 passing yards, 152 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. Just unbelievable stats, and I don't see why he couldn't do that again. Number 3, another quarterback coming back from injury, Drew Brees. He played the week before the bye, so this is his second game back, and I think he has great potential this week against Atlanta's bad defense. Number 4, Dak Prescott. Better fantasy quarterback than real life quarterback. But he has a great matchup against Minnesota's secondary, which has really struggled this year. We just saw Matt Moore throw all over Minnesota, so Prescott should be able to do the same. Number 5, Russell Wilson against the 49ers. This is a very difficult matchup, but I think this is going to be a case where Russell Wilson is going to be way behind in the second half, and he's going to throw a lot. We saw that against the Saints, where he just went crazy in the second half, and he actually became the winning captain in the DraftKings Showdown slate. So that's how like much fantasy potential at least he has in games like this. Number 6, Kyler Murray against Tampa Bay secondary. Tampa Bay is using a cornerback named Jamel Dean, who might be the fattest cornerback I've ever seen. It was like torture watching him play last week because I had Arizona in the Super Contest I had Tampa in the Super Contest, and he lost that game for them. He really did. He couldn't cover anyone. They just ran around him. Number 7, Philip Rivers. He plays Thursday night, so you can't use him in the main slate. But against Oakland secondary, he has a good matchup, and I think there's a good chance the Chargers are going to be behind, and they're going to have to throw a lot. So Rivers could benefit from that. Number 8, Aaron Rodgers. The Panthers have a good pass defense, but Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and he's going to produce. Number 9, Jameis Winston against the Cardinals. I think this could be a bad Jameis Winston game where he throws a pick 6, coming off a deflating overtime loss.
Oh God!
But you know what? If he throws a pick 6, that's great for fantasy because that means he's just going to be back on the field and throwing more. And chances are he's going to be behind. So if he's behind, Winston could hit 400 yards in this game and have 3 interceptions. I think that's definitely viable.
Yeah, Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, right. And in fact, I don't think it's crazy to play Arizona's defense with Jameis Winston in your lineup. Usually you don't want to play a defense with the quarterback they're going against, but I actually think there's some positive correlation there. And number 10, Matt Ryan, same deal as Russell Wilson. Matt Ryan is going to get a ton of garbage yardage against tough defense, but he's going to go nuts in the second half. So, Michael, anything stand out here?
Well, Jameis, you never know. I'm starting to believe in the guy again, but yeah, pick
That's when
six.
that's when he crushes your soul.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, let me ask you this for this week's DraftKings picks. Which quarterbacks should I kind of look at?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I was going to get to the QB stacks, which
Yeah,
I
that's what I
did
was
this
going to
week.
talk about, the stats. Yeah.
So yeah, if you're watching or listening for the first time, something I recommend, highly recommend doing on DraftKings is to with your quarterback, whomever you choose, use two receivers or a receiver plus a tight end with that quarterback, because if you're in a large field tournament with 300,000 people, other people are going to have your quarterback, and if your quarterback throws a touchdown, you're going to be happy. But if he throws a touchdown to a receiver you don't have, there's a good chance that other people will have that receiver and they're going to score more points than you. So you want to positively correlate your quarterback with the receivers or tight end. So there's 6 quarterbacks I'm focusing on as stack options this week. Patrick Mahomes, pair him with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I think that's the top 2 guys you want. If you want to get contrarian, I think Sammy Watkins is a good choice. Plus, he's very cheap. So those 3 guys are guys I would concentrate on with Mahomes. Number 2, Drew Brees, pairing with Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn. And then, again, a tertiary option is Jared Cook, the tight end.
I love that word tertiary.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, this is an unusual quarterback because Aaron Rodgers throws a lot to his running backs. So this is an occasion where I have his running back paired with him, Aaron Jones. We've seen Aaron Jones have 7 or more targets in, I believe, 4 of his last 6 games. So he has the potential to score a receiving touchdown for sure. We've seen that a lot this year. So he and Devontae Adams, I think, are the 2 clear-cut options. I can't even find a third option to use with Rodgers, really. Maybe if you want to
Lazard.
go, if you want to go very contrarian, Alan Lazard. But I don't know if he has the upside to win you a tournament. So
He's still getting more snaps than Geronimo and Kumaro.
no,
Yeah,
you're right.
Even with Devontae Adams back, he had a bunch of snaps. So
You're right. I mean, he's getting more snaps.
Aaron likes him.
He does. I just don't know if he has the upside to win a tournament. So I don't know if I'd go that route. Jameis Winston, this is, I believe, obvious. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, they're the top 2 receivers. Actually, I want to add O.J. Howard here. He's coming back from injury. And we've seen Tampa tight end, or we've seen tight ends against Arizona's defense. Just usually they do well unless your name's Tyler.
O.J. Howard, really?
Yeah, I think
Come on, man.
it's
time to give up on him.
Well, you know what? I haven't used them in a single DraftKings lineup this year. But I think this might be the week to do it. Lamar Jackson.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You said Arizona sucks against tight ends.
Yeah, they're the worst against tight ends. Yeah.
So Cameron Brate's is the guy you should pick.
Or Cameron Brate even, or OJ Howard, one of them.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is a unique DraftKings quarterback because you can run him out without a stack because he has high potential of scoring a rushing touchdown. So you may not need his receivers, but if you want to stack either Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews with him, I think that's fine. I wouldn't use both of these guys with Lamar Jackson. I would go one or the other.
Why?
And, because Jackson has a high chance of scoring a rushing touchdown. Yeah, so his passing touchdowns aren't as high. It's the rushing yardage with him.
That's interesting.
And Matt Ryan here with Julio Jones, Austin Hooper, and Calvin Ridley. Julio Jones has a very difficult matchup against Marshall Lattimore, but Julio Jones is just so talented that I wouldn't avoid him with Matt Ryan. I would go Austin Hooper over Calvin Ridley because New Orleans' defense is very good against receivers, but not as good against tight ends. So I'd go Hooper over Ridley, but I think Ridley is a fine option as well. So those are the stacks I like the most. I had Daniel Jones here as well before the Evan Ingram injury news.
We made a good decision last week going with Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay because they both went over 100 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Kim ran it back with Josh Jacobs. So yeah, keep in mind also that you want to have one player from another team if you go with these quarterbacks. Like for example, if you go with Drew Brees, you may want Austin Hooper or Calvin Ridley. Julio Jones might be too expensive if you have Michael Thomas as well. But you might want to make that work. Let's get to the running backs, and I think there's one clear-cut number one option this week. Christian McCaffrey, 10 points better than the number two guy. This guy's just unbelievable. And I think the thing with McCaffrey is that he's played tough run defenses recently. Like, he hasn't had an easy matchup, and yet he's been dominating. So I'm excited to see what he does against Green Bay. And we've seen the Packers struggle against the run. So McCaffrey could have his best game of the year, as crazy as it sounds. Like, he's just been an MVP candidate, and he could be even better this week. So in DraftKings, he's $10,500. It's insane how expensive he is. But I think that more likely than not, he's going to be in a winning lineup. So I would pay up for McCaffrey and try to get cheaper elsewhere. Number two, Ezekiel Elliott. He plays Sunday night, so you can't use him on the main slate. But he's Minnesota's run defense is good, but Ezekiel Elliott is just so involved. Dallas's offensive line is great, and I think Dallas is going to have the lead. So I think Elliott has a good chance to beat expectations. Number three, Alvin Kamara is going to be back from injury, and I don't see a reason not to use him against Atlanta's horrible defense. Number four, and we discussed Nick Chubb. I'm not going to give up on him with Kareem Hunt coming back. Buffalo's run defense is horrible. And Chubb is he's a nice pivot to McCaffrey if you can't spend up that much. I believe he's only 7,000 or maybe 7,400. So I think that's very cheap for him. Number five, Saquon Barkley. He's had some of his touches get lost from Daniel Jones running. So I don't think people have noticed that as much. Barkley is he's the second highest player or at his position on DraftKings. And I think he's too expensive. I mean, he has the upside. He can go off and have a great game, but he's just not getting the touches. And plus, the Jets aren't as bad as against the run as other teams are. So I wouldn't go crazy with Barkley. Number six, Aaron Jones against Carolina. I think it's a get-right game for the Packers. Usually, Green Bay's great off a loss. They were embarrassed last week. I think they beat Carolina, and if they're ahead, Aaron Jones is going to run a lot. Number seven, Marlon Mack against Miami's horrible defense. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. Number eight, Josh Jacobs against the Chargers, who are missing their top two defensive tackles. Seems like a good matchup. Number nine, David Montgomery. The Bears are finally using him, and it's nice. He looks great. And Detroit's run defense is bad. We just saw Josh Jacobs go off against Detroit, so Montgomery I think could have the same. He's very cheap on DraftKings. He's only like 5,300, so I like him a lot. And then Jalen Samuels, number 10. If James Conner doesn't come back, Samuels is going to have the same usage he had against the Colts. So I like him in PPR.
Who's the back tone between David Montgomery and Devin Singletary?
What'd you say?
Who do you like better as the back to own in a year-long league, Montgomery or Singletary?
I would say Montgomery because he's going to get the rushing touchdowns, whereas we saw last week the Bills used Frank Gore at the goal line. So that would concern me. Yeah. But you can see here that so Dalvin Cook is 11, Le'Veon Bell 12, Gurley 13, but Devin Singletary is 14. So only about a 5 running backs between those guys. So
that's a good point, Walter.
Thank you. Anything else stand out before we go to receivers?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's go down to receivers here. And Michael Thomas, I think number one this week against Atlanta's horrible secondary. But not too far behind him, Tyreek Hill. If Patrick Mahomes comes back, Tennessee's defense is terrible against number one receivers. So I think Tyreek Hill could have a huge game with Mahomes. And he's cheaper than Michael Thomas. So I'm going to have equal shares of them, I think. Number three, Amari Cooper plays Sunday night. Minnesota's pass defense is just a train wreck right now with Xavier Rhodes being injured. They just can't stop receivers. Number four, Chris Godwin over Mike Evans this week. Evans is going to see Patrick Peterson's coverage, whereas Godwin is going to get more opportunities out of the slot. So I like Godwin more than Evans. Number five, Cooper Kupp is, I mentioned that I don't like the Rams this week, but Kupp is an exception because, with all the pressure that Jared Goff's going to receive, he's going to throw shorter passes, and I think Kupp is going to take advantage of those. Number six, Keenan Allen.
Well, they used to live together, too.
Oh, yeah, that definitely helped. Number six, Keenan Allen against the Raiders. Raiders secondary is horrible. Keenan Allen has disappointed this year, but I think this could be a game where he breaks out and surprises everyone. So I like him. Number 7, Julio Jones. I mentioned that he has a very difficult matchup, but he's so talented that you can't ignore him. Number 8, Devontae Adams against Carolina. Somewhat of a difficult matchup for him, but Adams is so talented, and he has Aaron Rodgers throwing to him, so he has to be in the top 10.
Yeah, he's going to get the targets.
Yep. Number 9, Tyler Lockett. Again, with Russell Wilson throwing a lot in the second half, I think Lockett could go off. And he's not going to be seeing Richard Sherman. He's going to be in the slot. So I wouldn't worry too much about Lockett. But DK Metcalf, I don't like nearly as much this week. And then number 10, Marquise Brown, very cheap on DraftKings. He didn't play against Cincinnati the first time they played. And Cincinnati's secondary is horrible. So Brown has a great chance to go off. So those are the top 10 receivers. Any thoughts on those?
What's been going on with Keenan Allen? Is it
It,
Hunter Henry?
No, the Chargers' offensive line has been so bad that they haven't been able to block and Phillip Rivers hasn't been able to throw to Keenan Allen as much. But I think
He's been hitting Mike Williams and Hunter Henry a ton.
Yeah, well, he did last week. And I mean, Hunter Henry's kind of an intermediate guy anyway, but like he hit Mike Williams for sure. And I think that gives me more confidence in Keenan Allen now.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Oh, because, yeah, coverage.
Right, and the fact that they got Russell Okung back, their left tackle, who was injured for the entire year up until last week or 2 weeks ago, they're going to have better protection. And we know Oakland's secondary is horrible, so I like Allen. So anything else?
No.
All right, let's get to tight ends. So Travis Kelce, number 1, if Mahomes is coming back. Even if not, he's probably number 1. So George Kittle, number 2, he plays Monday night, but he has a good matchup against Seattle's defense. Number 3,
well, he's injured, but I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, he didn't practice on Tuesday, but that was really a real practice for them. So I think he'll be fine. Number 3, Darren Waller, disappointing week last week, but I think he'll rebound. Number 4, Hunter Henry, just mentioned him. He's a great matchup against Oakland's horrible linebackers. Number 5, Austin Hooper. I talked about him earlier against the Saints defense, which is not as good against tight ends. Number 6, Mark Andrews against the Bengals. Bengals linebackers are the worst linebacking core in the NFL. So Andrews has a great opportunity there. Number 7, Evan Ingram. We mentioned him that he might be injured, so obviously move him way down if he's hurt. Right now, this is my ranking of Ingram. Number 8, TJ Hawkinson against the Bears. The Bears don't cover the middle of the field that well, and I think Hawkinson could have a nice opportunity to have a good game. Number 9, Jonnu Smith. If Delaney Walker is out, that Jonnu Smith should be here. Jonnu Smith has played well without Walker, but it sounds like Walker has a good chance of coming back, so I would drop Smith. Yeah, I would drop Smith if Walker comes back. And then number 10, Greg Olsen, old man Greg Olsen against the Packers defense. Packers not so good against tight ends, and I think Olsen can have a decent game. It's kind of a rough week for tight ends. It's kind of hard.
He hasn't done that well since Cam's been gone, though. He's the one guy that does miss Cam.
Yeah, that's true. He had a good week against Arizona in week 3. He had a good game
against
there.
Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa week 2 without. Yeah, you're right. The second game against Tampa. He has a good chance to have a fine game here. But like I said, it's a very rough week for tight ends. If you're not using Kelce, I would pay way down. Maybe you get Mike Gesicki in there with Preston Williams out for the Dolphins.
Are you a believer in him, Gesicki?
I believe in his athletic ability. I don't know if he's as good of a football player, but he's going to get the targets. He got the targets last week, and I would use him. I believe he's like $3,000 in DraftKings. So,
wow,
he's cheap. I think with tight ends on DraftKings, you either pay up for the top guy or you just go way to the bottom and use someone who's $3,000. So those are tight ends. I just want to list these core players. So Kim, these are the core players I want. At least 2 of these in all my lineups. So we have this is sorted by cost. So McCaffrey number 1, Barkley. Maybe Barkley probably shouldn't be here because he's seeing reduced touches, but he's still phenomenal. Then you have Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, the 2 Saints guys, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, Aaron Jones, Cooper Kupp, Nick Chubb, Marlon Mack, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, the only tight end here. Golden Tate, if Evan Ingram's out, he's going to get so many targets. I forget Fitzgerald. I don't want him here. David Montgomery, I love him this week at a 5,300, very cheap price. Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, Devin Singletary, and then Damian Williams, the cheapest guy at 4,900. Damian Williams is seeing way more carries than LaShawn McCoy right now. And if Mahomes is back, I like Damian Williams a lot. If not, then not so much. But I feel like with Mahomes back, Damian Williams has a great chance to score at least once. So I like him a lot.
Okay.
I gave up on him.
Well, he had that 91-yard touchdown run last week.
Yeah.
So maybe
That isn't going to happen again.
No, that was the longest run in Chiefs history. So I don't think it's going to happen again. But with Mahomes coming back, he's going to be in position to score. So I think as long as Mahomes plays, you can basically play anyone on Kansas City's roster. And
wow,
unless they're
well, he's on the waiver wire almost everywhere now.
Yeah, I picked him up in one league. So. I like Williams quite a bit. It seems like LaShawn McCoy's not involved nearly as much in the offense anymore. So,
but don't like Williams if you think that Mahomes is definitely coming back.
If Mahomes is back, yeah, Damian Williams. If Mahomes is not coming back, then I don't like Damian Williams that much. Don't hate him, but he wouldn't be one of my core players.
What's scary is how David Montgomery went off against San Angeles. And Aaron Jones just got nothing.
So do you key this data in yourself?
This tab I did when I was going over the DraftKings on Monday. Whereas the scores, I punch in the stats and it calculates the fantasy points.
Aaron wasn't getting any time to throw. You would think that they would have tried to run it more.
You would think so. I just think the Packers kind of mailed that one in. I don't think they tried very hard. Even Aaron Rodgers said that they partied too much before the game, and which is disappointing because I had the Packers in the Super Contest, and I'm one game out of first place in the Gold.
Oh, wow.
And if the Packers would have covered, I'd be first place right now in the Gold.
Wow.
You would think that these guys by now would have a rule of no partying before the game, right?
Well, they're in cold Green Bay and they're in San Angeles.
Yeah, it's still though, like they work 4 months a year, 5 months if you count the preseason. So they can wait till January to party. I don't understand why they have to wait that long. It's just
when their last game is over, right? Just a little bit of discipline. My God, it's only 3 months.
Kim, have you been to Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I still think you can wait till January, or unless you're in the playoffs, and then February.
Cheese and cows and the Packers. That's it.
Yeah.
Cows and the Packers. No wonder they drink so much.
Yeah. No. I was in Minnesota for the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and I know how cold it is. So I don't blame them for going nuts in a warm city, but it's not that cold yet. It's only the beginning of November. I had to
work up there for a couple of years, and it was freezing. I mean, I would rotate coming back here, but I could never get built up to the amount of sustainability that you needed to stay warm there. I mean, unfortunately, I'm an ice skater, so I skated a lot, but it was too cold, way too cold.
Yeah, no.
A lot of alcohol to insulate with.
Yeah, I don't know how you live up there. My friend Kenny lives in Minnesota, and every time I talk to him when it's cold out, he's like, "What am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing here."
Well, the snow is insane. Yeah. And when I worked up there and was rotating, I would have to go through these tunnels to get to the office where we worked. And there was a point where you would go through the tunnels, go through the back of one store, go through the store, and cross the street to get to it. And it was crossing that street that you froze.
Wow.
Well, before I hear from my cousins, I actually do miss Wisconsin, and I love the snow. Not the day off of school. I love snow days. No school.
What did you think of Minnesota, though, when you were there for the Super Bowl?
The people were nice.
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
nice.
Yes.
And in fact, overly nice. It was kind of
Yeah.
strange, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like the mall. I mean, we were in the mall a couple times. It's pretty cool that you could just take the train there and you just get
Yeah.
there. And it's huge. Like we were walking for a half hour and we hadn't seen old stuff. It was just we just kept walking.
Yeah, Montreal's like that too.
Yeah, but it was way too cold. It was and I was at an event and someone took my coat, so I lost my coat, and it
Oh
was
no.
negative
Oh,
five.
no.
It was -5 degrees out, and so I had to go to the Mall of America to buy a new coat. But it was February and they already had their spring stuff out, so most of the stores didn't even have coats.
You did
So
the jerks on that, didn't you?
yeah, I wrote a jerks.
Yeah.
Yeah, jerks of the week on it. So
Yeah,
if
we
you
made
got-
jerks of the week last week, Kim.
What?
You and I made jerks of the week last week.
Oh, we did?
Yeah,
We-
starring
we
the
made
flower
him
lady.
late
Well,
for his
flower lady had me rolling on the floor, dude.
I
We
felt
made
bad for her,
Walter
but-
late for his sister's dinner. Very late.
Well, I told Walter
It's
we won't
hilarious.
do that anymore.
Anybody who wants a good laugh, read Walter's jerks column. It's
I-
hilarious.
It was a beautiful story, Walter.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Okay. So I guess that's it for this week. Unless you guys have anything else.
No, it's fantastic
I'll
as
be
usual, dude.
calling you about my picks for this week when I start doing my fantasy, my picks, my DraftKings. So,
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, you can go to walterfootball.com and look up updated fantasy rankings. We'll have updates throughout the week. We'll have NFL picks as well and a 2020 NFL mock draft that was updated today. But yeah, let us know which fantasy players you're using this week, which fantasy players you're using on DraftKings, and anyone you like or dislike in our rankings. So I guess I'll talk to you guys next week.
take
Yeah,
care,
it's fun
guys.
working with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Had a blast.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a wrap. Luke, do you have any other questions or any input for our team here? It's awful quiet.
Yeah,
So I guess we'll sign off.
I will say I would say that check out walterfootball.com. We have updated fantasy rankings every single week. Looks like we have a comment or a question.
Oh, that's a wrap. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, great show. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, great
Thank
show.
you.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Sir?
It's valuable advice you shouldn't have given away, man. We should share that privately. This is anybody who's involved in daily. If they aren't listening to Walter, then they're really missing out. And it's an honor to work with you guys.
And here
It's a lot of fun.
I am just having the time of my life, and I need to listen more. And I am, but I also, I'm going to text you before I make my next. At least get the captain right this time. But no, this is a lot of fun, and I've learned so much. And thank you for explaining how all of that works and what that means. Even though I didn't win anything, I felt like I gained so much just in understanding what's going on and what you guys are doing when you're watching football all day long. It's not just about the game, right?
It's compelling, dude.
Yeah, it's
theater. There's nothing like it.
So much analytics involved.
Yeah.
It is just mind-boggling, but fun. But before we go, I want to thank our viewers who dialed in and ask them if they have any questions or pointers, or if they, want to just say anything. I'll be more than happy to unmute anyone.
Give us your honest opinion of Walter's book after the flight.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to definitely. We'll
Think
do
how much
that.
smarter you're going to be after that.
One last question for me. This is from Luke.
Okay.
Let's see if we can pull this.
Oh,
up.
yeah. Should he play Austin Hooper if Matt Schaub's playing? That's a great
Right.
question.
So should I still put Austin Hooper in my lineup even if his quarterback is injured and doesn't?
Matt Schaub. Matt
Dude.
Schaub.
I'm thinking about the starting Darren Waller ahead of him in that case. And yeah, that's. I had that written down here. So yeah.
I would play Waller over Hooper. I don't think Hooper's a bad play if Matt Schaub is starting because Schaub is going to have to throw shorter passes. But what you're going to give up with Schaub is potential touchdowns because they might have like one drive at the end or maybe two drives in the fourth quarter where they get toward the red zone.
Well, Schaub throw touchdowns for his team or the other team?
That's true. That's true. So Hooper, who I had at he's number 2. If Matt Schaub starts, Hooper probably dropped to like number 10 around there. So I would have Waller ahead a little bit over Hooper. Again, like it's not a good matchup, but they use Waller as like a receiver sometimes. So it's not like they're just going to take away a tight end again. Like he's just so talented that. And he's their primary receiver, so I would start Waller over Hooper. But obviously you want to pay attention to the injury report. So
and pay close attention to that before the game, right?
yeah. I mean, even if you do, like with David Johnson, you never know what's going to happen. So it's always a risk, but usually the quarterback's not going to be sidelined after one play. Like that. I've never seen that happen before. That would be remarkable. But yeah, so if Matt Ryan is announced as playing, then fire Hooper up. If not, then I would start Waller. So that's what I think about that. But it'd still be close.
Yeah, that's
brilliant, Walter, and thank you to our millions and millions of fans watching on IBM TV.
Well, thank you, Luke, for the great and wonderful questions and all the other people who dialed in. Wait, we got something else. That's a good
Thank you, Luke. Yeah.
Thank you, Luke. We thoroughly enjoy the fact that you're dialing in, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's it for this week. You can go to walterfootball.com. I'm going to have updated fantasy rankings every single day. We have NFL picks, 2020 NFL mock draft. So lots of content. And the book, please, if you want to support the site, A Safety and a Field Goal, it's available on Amazon. Check that out if you can. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys next week. And for everyone listening, just what do you think? Who are you going to play in DraftKings? Who are you going to play in your year-long leagues? Just let us know. If you have any sleepers that we missed, for sure, let us know in the comments. And otherwise, I'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, you guys can always post on Facebook too, and Walter does answer those posts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you very much.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.